Good morning. I am Reverend Brian Ferguson. I have the honour of serving as the minister of this congregation, and I use the pronouns he, him, his. You probably noticed that you do not have an order of service. That's because none of us here knows what's going to happen next. You laugh. But yes, we're exploring the idea of the wonder of not knowing today. And so we're going to demonstrate that with the order of service. I don't know what's going to happen next. Liz doesn't know what's going to happen next. Even Dawn doesn't know what's going to happen next. Only God knows what's going to happen next. And I hear she's busy. So I'd like to invite, if there's any children forward. You probably noticed we've got gifts on the table here. I actually don't see any children. I saw a couple walking by, but, well, we'll have to do it. Is there any children here? No. Well, what I'd like to do is I'll invite someone from the congregation to come up, open one of these gifts, and each of these gifts contains one of the elements of the order of service. I told you we don't know what's happening next. And I want you to really get into the feelings, though, of not knowing. Because I know some of you cling to the order of service, and when I miss an element, I usually hear about it after the service. Like, you forgot this. But we don't know what's going to happen. So really experience like not knowing the anticipation, because I think one of the exciting things about Christmas for me, and I'll talk about this later, if we have a time for all ages at some point, then we will talk about how the excitement of not knowing, it's really one of the most exciting things that could happen. I mean, I don't know if those of you who are following the World Cup today, well, I left 15 minutes before the end of the second half when all the excitement happened because I was coming here to work, so I'm really in a bad mood because I missed all the excitement. So sometimes when you think you know what's going to happen, you don't really know what's going to happen. So I invite first person, whoever would like to come up and select a gift and open it. And if you could tell us what's happening.
My father once told me, sometimes you just know you're on the wrong path and it's time to get off. His advice has stayed with me for many years. The key for me is that he didn't say anything about what path to get on. There have been several times in my life when I've been on the wrong path, in the wrong job, living in the wrong place. In those times, thinking of my father's advice and knowing that I didn't have to find the right path gave me the courage to make a change. One of the biggest changes I've made in my life was moving to California after more than 40 years of living on the East Coast. I knew it was time. I felt I was in the wrong job, I was tired of winter, and I was ready for something different. It was time to get on a different path. During that time of transition, I was living with so much fear and anxiety. Not knowing where we would live or what my job would be was a daily struggle. I am a planner. I like to know what's next. Letting go of that certainty was agonizing. At the end of the poem, Desiderata, there is a line, "Whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should." This concept of faith in the universe is what got me through and gave me the courage to keep moving forward. I just had to believe that it would work out one way or another. And if it turned out to be the wrong path, I would just try another one. Each step I have taken has led me to the next thing. Looking back at the journey gives me the courage to look forward, knowing that I don't have to get it exactly right, and trusting that the universe is unfolding as it should has helped me to have the courage to make choices and changes, even when I have no idea what will happen next. Thank you.
I'd like to open with the words of the late Unitarian Universalist minister, Gordon McKeeman, one of my favorite writers. How does one address a mystery? cautiously. Let us go cautiously then to the end of our certainty, to the boundary of all we know, to the rim of uncertainty, to the perimeter of the unknown which surrounds us. Reverently, let us go with a sense of awe, a feeling of approaching the powerful holy, whose lightning slashes the sky, whose persistence splits concrete with green sprouts, whose miracles are present in every place and every moment. Hopefully, out of our needs for wholeness in our lives, the reconciliation of mind and heart, the conjunction of reason and passion, the intersection of the timeless with time. Quietly, for no words will explain the inarticulate or summon the presence that is always present, even in our absence. But what shall I say? Anything. Any anger, any hope, any fear, any joy, any quest, any word that comes from the depth of being, addressed to being itself. Or perhaps nothing. No complaint, no request, no entreaty, no thanksgiving, no praise, no blame, no pretense of knowing or of not knowing. Simply be the intimate presence of mystery, unashamed, unadorned, unafraid. And the end say, Amen. Those are the words of Reverend Gordon McKeeman. The relationship between wonder and knowing is complex. What we know, when we know what's happening next, or we want to know what's happening next, the goal is when it's going to happen. When you know what you're doing, but sometimes you don't know what you're doing, and the goal is, what should I be doing next? It's not about the time when something's going to happen. We don't even know which direction to go in, where the next step should take us. And there's an excitement to that, of not knowing. We watch sports, as I was watching the World Cup this morning at 7 o'clock, not knowing who was going to win, thinking I knew when I left. I'd find out things had changed in the 10 minutes it took to get from my apartment to the office. We read books not knowing. We love whodunits, many of us, like who was responsible for the crime. The idea of not knowing gives us an excitement, because I think so much in our life is known. We think, and then something comes and surprises us. Something we sought, or something that came out of the blue and shifts our whole perspective. And I think there's two types of way to approach wonder and not knowing. There's a complex curiosity of adults where we try and find out what caused it. And then there's a simple delight, or the childlike wonder of just appreciating what it is. And I love the idea of the example of the rainbow. Now, I'm a physics major. Some of you will not be surprised to hear that, and some of you might be. So I can go into the 3 different layers of refraction that go on in a water droplet that split the light and the critical angle that reflects it back to us. I find a wonder in that. But there's a wonder and a beauty in just appreciating the rainbow for what it is. This miraculous apparition in the sky. And sometimes you get a double rainbow. And I love when they had the first Pride Parade in Dublin. It had a double rainbow for the first Pride Parade they had in Dublin, Ireland. And I think the rainbow carries a lot of symbolism for us now. But I think appreciating beauty is an emotional exercise. And finding a solution is an intellectual one. And I think the beauty of getting into, connecting with our emotions is it takes us into the present moment. Whereas intellectual, we're looking forward. The wonder is looking forward. It's not appreciating that moment. Now, I generally like routine. I've been having the same breakfast for 25 years. 2, and I just added a third variation. I go for granola, yogurt, and I used to always go for grapes. Then I've added blueberries, and now for health reasons I've added raspberries. And my partner and my daughter look at me with absolute horror that not only do I do that every morning, I actually enjoy it. And I do enjoy it. But we can often get thrown off our routines. I mean, sometimes we do it deliberately. We go on vacation and our routine is disrupted, and we kind of like that. And then we come home and we realize we like the familiarity as well. And sometimes in a spate of mischievous and dastardly changes that the minister makes to the order of service, it totally throws us off. Like, I like to know what's happening next. That's what the biggest reason I hear for having a printed order of service. I want to know what happens next. And I usually reply, I don't. I want you to be in the moment. So we might not ever see an order of service again. I'll see how much goodwill I want to use up right now. But there is something about knowing what's going to happen, takes us out of the present moment. And I wonder if that's always good, because there's something about getting in touch with our emotions, getting in touch with the uncertainty of what's going to happen next, and sitting in that, because life is uncertain. And we do not control, really, what's going to happen next, any of us. There is a blessing in not knowing, and there's an excitement in not knowing. I think the more we can live into that not knowing, we can appreciate that excitement. I asked you a couple of weeks ago, you consider yourself a devoutly religious person. I didn't get any answers to that question. So I'm assuming that the answer is yes, you all do. I was exploring the idea of wonder and awe, and I understand it can be a tricky question for many of us. And I also was doing it in the context of a first Unitarian Universalist source, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. Direct experience of the transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. Now, some of us may be flying this holiday season. I become devoutly religious every time I fly. And most of you are probably thinking because I'm scared of flying, and there's a truth to that to a degree, but that's not really where the wonder comes in. When you wander out and look at an aeroplane and know that that's going to get off the ground, not only is it going to get off the ground, it's going to get up to 36,000 feet, and it's going to travel at 500 miles an hour, and we're going to be sitting there eating, drinking, watching a movie. That's wondrous. And then you see the land from 36,000 feet up, or even as you climb, you see it at the different heights. You get this appreciation of the world. I remember flying over Greenland one time when I was coming back from Scotland, and it was remarkable, the size of the icebergs and the glaciers there. You see the world from a different perspective, and I don't think we appreciate it. We take flying for granted. We should be screaming with joy the whole way. It's tough to do for 11 hours flying from San Francisco to Scotland, but I'm going to give it a try. But there is a wonder in being above the clouds and seeing the clouds from above, seeing the land from above. And we think of the first photo from space of the earth, and how that gave a different shift in many of our worldview, that picture of the earth as a uniform globe, and not these artificial boundaries that we see in maps. And I think it can shift our perspective, and I think we need to be open to that. When we can embrace the wonder and awe of not knowing, it opens us up to a new perspective, to new excitement, to new inspirations. I'd like to finish with a story from the Zen Buddhist tradition. It's about this Western Buddhist scholar who goes to see this Japanese master in Japan. And he's really excited to see him, but the Western scholar's a little bit arrogant, and so he meets this master, and the master starts talking, and the Western scholar keeps interrupting him to show off his knowledge. So the Zen master asks him, "Would you like a cup of tea?" And he said, "Oh yes." And so he starts pouring the cup of tea, and when it reaches the top, he keeps pouring, and it goes over the saucer, and then he keeps pouring it till it goes all over the Western scholar. The Western scholar goes, "What are you doing? Are you an idiot? You can't even pour a cup of tea." And he said, "No, this cup is like you. You are so full of what you know. You've not come here to learn anything from me. To learn, we need to have an empty cup." And in the Buddhist tradition, they talk about that empty mind or beginner's mind, where we're open to learning, we're open to wonderment, we're open to awe. And that's what I invite us to think about when we think of the wonder of not knowing. That can be a great gift to us and not something we should be frightened of. Well, all of those young in body or spirit can come forward for this if you wish. What time is that? 20 to 5. Maybe. Christmas morning when I was a young boy, I think I was about 7 or 8, I got so excited at Christmas time, and I couldn't wait for it to come. I remember at 5 o'clock in the afternoon trying to get to sleep so that I'd wake up and it would be Christmas morning. I had such an anticipation, such an excitement. And one morning I woke up and I looked at the clock, and I was so excited because my dad said, "You cannot get up until 7:30 or 7:30, since he was Scottish." And so I woke up and it was almost 25 past 8. I thought, that's great. I got up, I woke my big brother up. You're going to sleep late up. I woke my mum and dad, went downstairs, opened a present, and all of a sudden I felt this tap on my shoulder. It was my dad. And he showed me he had a clock in the hand, nicer than this one, but it's 20 to 5. And I don't think he believed me, but honestly, I had misread the clock. I thought it was 20. I got the hands mixed up. I knew how to tell the time. I was just too excited. So I got so excited at Christmas because of that. But that was always a funny story that we had. We got told every dinner at Christmas about when Brian got the family up at 20 to 5. To his dying day, I don't think my dad ever believed me, but I promise it's true. Liz has been wondering, why's Brian got a clock? But then there's another thing that happened at Christmas time, because I always get so excited about the presents, and I'd always pester my mum and dad and my brother, like, "What did you get me? What did you get me? What did you get me?" I'm sure I was the only child that ever did this. And one time my brother got so fed up, he told me where my mum and dad had hidden the presents. And I went and found them and saw what it was. I didn't know what Santa was bringing me, but I knew what my mum and dad were getting me. And that took away a lot of the excitement of Christmas, knowing what I was getting. It was probably one of the more disappointing Christmases I had, because I knew what I was getting. I always remember that after that, I'd never even asked. And I think my mum and dad were really suspicious, like, "You stopped asking," But it was because what was exciting was the not knowing. And I think of that from the religious perspective. We often talk, we Unitarian Universalists, or many of us, not all of us, or some of us, think, well, I don't believe in God. But let's be honest, none of us know. And perhaps there's an openness to being to the sacred, the divine. Maybe the images of God we've got up until now haven't been satisfying to us, but are we still open to the sacred, to the divine, to those special, sublime moments? Because I don't think if we're not open to them, we might not be aware of them when they happen. So I invite us to maybe just open our minds a little bit, especially from the spiritual, religious perspective, because not knowing is a lot more exciting than knowing.
Uh-oh. Number 22 is a joke by Reverend Brian Ferguson.
Ooh, I knew I should have prepared. Well, it only seems fair to mock my calling. There was a Hindu priest, a Jewish rabbi, and a Unitarian Universalist minister. They were walking through the countryside, and they got lost. And so they went up to this house and knocked on the door. And they asked the farmer, he said, look, we're lost. We're a rabbi, a Unitarian Universalist minister, and a Hindu priest. And we need somewhere to stay tonight because it's starting to rain and we're wet and we don't know where we are. And the farmer kind of looked at them and said, well, I'm fine with the Hindu priest and the Jewish rabbi, but I don't know about the Unitarian Universalist minister. But they said, come on in. But he said, I've only got room for 2 of you. One of you will need to sleep in the barn. So the Hindu priest said, oh, I'll sleep in the barn, that's fine. And the Unitarian Universalist minister and the rabbi go, and they're lying there, and the Hindu priest goes out to the barn. And 2 minutes later, it's a Hindu priest. He said, I'm sorry, there's cows in the barn. And they're sacred to me, and I don't feel comfortable sleeping with them. And so the Jewish rabbi said, oh, that's fine, I'll go and sleep in the barn. So he goes out and sleeps in the barn. 2 minutes later, it's a Jewish rabbi. He said, I'm sorry, there's pigs in the barn, and they're unclean. I can't sleep in the barn. And the Unitarian Universalist minister's like, okay, I'll go and sleep in the barn then, I suppose. So he goes out. 2 minutes later, it's a cow and the pig.
So tonight is the first night of Hanukkah. All Jewish holidays start at sundown. It was once explained to me, there are many different explanations, but the explanation that I like is that God said, let there be light. So before there was light, there was God, and that was darkness. And so the day in the Jewish mind starts with darkness, which would be sundown. So tonight we light the first candle of the menorah. The center candle is called the shamash, and that's what lights all the other candles. So you light the center candle, and then each night you add a candle until you have all 8 candles lit. And I was going to just share the story of Hanukkah. You may or may not be familiar with it, and so with a little more detail about what is Hanukkah. So the story of Hanukkah happened a long, long time ago in the land of Israel. At that time, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem was the most special place for the Jewish people. The temple contained many beautiful objects, including a tall golden menorah. Every evening, oil would be poured into the cups that sat on top of the menorah, and the temple would glow with shimmering light. At the time of the Hanukkah story, a cruel king named Antiochus ruled over the land of Israel. Antiochus ordered the Jewish people to stop being Jewish and to pray to the Greek gods. He sent his guards to ransack the temple. They brought mud and garbage into the temple. They broke furniture, tore the curtains, and smashed the jars of oil that were used to light the menorah. This made the Jews very angry. One Jew named Judah Maccabee cried out, "We must stop Antiochus. We must think of ways to make him leave the land of Israel." It took a long time, but at last the Maccabees chased Antiochus out and his men out of Israel. As soon as Antiochus and his soldiers were gone, the Jewish people hurried to Jerusalem to clean their temple. What a mess. The beautiful menorah was gone, the floor was covered with trash, and the jagged pieces from the shattered jars of oil. The Maccabees built a new menorah. At first they worried that they would not be able to light their new menorah, but they searched and searched until at last they found one tiny jar of oil, enough to light the menorah for just one evening. The Maccabees knew that it would be at least 8 days until they could prepare more oil, but they lit the menorah anyway. And to their surprise, this little jar of oil burned for 8 days. The Jewish people could not believe their good fortune. First, their small army had chased away Antiochus' large army, and now the tiny jar of oil had lasted for 8 whole days. The Jewish people prayed and thanked God for these miracles. And every year during Hanukkah, Jews light menorahs for 8 days to remember the miracle that happened long ago. Thank you.